Today was just another one of those mundane days. The monotonous office routine had filled most of my life. This morning, as usual, I woke up feeling lazy. I went through the motions of getting ready for work, washing my face, putting on my office clothes, and then rushing off to the train station. My job wasn't anything exciting, but it was something that needed to be done. Arriving at the office, I dove into the pile of work waiting on my desk. Time passed by quickly, and before I knew it, it was time to head home. I glanced at my computer screen once more, making sure nothing was left behind, and then wrapped up my work for the day. Leaving the office at night always gave me an eerie feeling. The streets that were usually bustling now lay silent, illuminated only by dim streetlights. I decided to walk to the train station, feeling that it would give me a chance to breathe in some fresh air after being cooped up indoors all day. The sky started to darken as I walked along the deserted sidewalk. As I passed through the city park, I felt something strange. The atmosphere grew tense, and a cold breeze swept around me. I quickened my pace, trying to brush off the creeping sense of fear. As I continued walking, the fear never left me. It felt like there was something lurking in the darkness, something I couldn't see. I kept walking faster, trying to push away the strange feeling. Suddenly, I felt like I was being watched. I stopped for a moment and looked around, trying to figure out what was causing the strange sensation. And among the shadows, I saw it. It stood behind a tree, almost invisible in the darkness. Its body was large and hairy, its eyes glowing red in the night. I froze in fear as I realized that I wasn't alone here. "Help," I whispered, but my voice was lost in the darkness. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The ghost approached, its steps heavy and shaking the ground beneath it. Driven by instinct, I fled. I ran as fast as I could without paying attention to the direction. But the ghost kept chasing me, its steps faster than mine. I could feel its breath on my neck, and the fear nearly overwhelmed me. Suddenly, I saw a light in the distance. It was the train station. I quickened my pace, trying to reach it before it was too late. But the ghost was still behind me, never far away. I jumped onto the station platform, gasping for breath. I turned around to see if the ghost was still following, but it had vanished. I felt relieved, but the fear still lingered within me. As the train arrived, I jumped inside, searching for an empty seat. I sat there, trembling, trying to gather my thoughts. What had just happened? Was it real or just my imagination? As the train sped away, taking me farther from that place, I knew that the story wasn't over yet. The ghost still lurked in the darkness, waiting for another chance to attack. And the fear would continue to haunt me until I found the answers. Whether it was real or just an illusion, I didn't know. All I knew was that the fear was real, and it would always be there, haunting my steps. The night had fallen in the dense forest. The wind whispered through the tall trees. Dark clouds covered the sky, hiding the moon and stars behind them. I, along with a few of my good friends, decided to spend this weekend camping in the woods. However, what we didn't know was that tonight would be more terrifying than we ever imagined. The forest we chose was far from civilization, in a place rarely visited by people. We set up our tents on the edge of a peaceful lake, surrounded by towering trees. A warm campfire flickered in the middle of our camp, providing some comfort amidst the dark night that enveloped us. As the night grew later, we sat around the campfire, telling stories, joking, and enjoying each other's company. However, a strange feeling began to creep inside me. I felt like something was watching from behind the trees, something unseen by ordinary human eyes. Suddenly, a rumble echoed in the distance. All our eyes met, filled with the same fear. It didn't sound like the noise of ordinary animals. It felt more like distant thunder, yet there was an eeriness to it. "What's that?" I asked my friends. They shook their heads, their expressions filled with confusion. However, we chose to ignore the sound, thinking that perhaps It was just the sounds of nature sounding strange to our unaccustomed ears in the silence of the forest. We resumed our storytelling and laughter, trying to distract our minds from the mysterious sound earlier. But then, something much more frightening happened. From behind the trees across the lake emerged a dark figure slowly making its way towards us. My heart pounded, and my skin prickled as if touched by a cold breeze. "Who is that?" I whispered to my friends, but they too remained silent, staring at the figure. The figure drew closer, and I could see something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Its body resembled that of a human, but its head resembled that of a wolf, complete with glowing yellow eyes radiating darkness. "A ghost," one of our friends whispered, his voice trembling with fear. We all fell silent, too afraid to move. The figure drew closer, its steps sounding like distant thunder in the silent night. Suddenly, the figure stopped just outside the circle of light from our campfire. It stared at us with eyes filled with hatred and evil intentions. The atmosphere around us felt so tense, as if time itself had stopped. We didn't know what to do. Our rational minds told us to run as fast as we could, but our legs felt like they were glued to the ground. We were trapped in place, prey to this terrifying presence. The figure then let out a terrifying sound, a sound that shook our hearts and souls. It was the howl of a wolf, but there was a dark power within it that made our bodies tremble. We tried to gather our courage. I looked into the faces of my friends, seeking reassurance in their eyes. Though fear was etched on their faces, we knew that we had to move. With one simultaneous movement, we leaped to our feet and ran as fast as we could away from the camp. Our steps trembled, and our breaths were ragged in the cold air. Yet somehow, the figure seemed to follow us. I could feel its presence behind us, lurking among the trees with eyes dark and hungry. We continued to run without a clear direction, just hoping to find some shelter in this terrifying darkness. But the figure kept chasing us, filling the forest with its terrifying wolfish howls. After running tirelessly for some time, we finally found a hidden cave behind thick bushes. Without hesitation, we entered the cave, hiding inside it like mice cornered by a big cat. Inside the cave, we felt a little safer. However, fear still hung heavy in the air, and a sense of suffocation gripped our chests. We sat together, trying to calm ourselves and find a way out of this horrifying situation. Suddenly, we heard footsteps outside the cave. The figure had found us. My heart raced, and cold sweat began to trickle down my temple. We exchanged glances, knowing that we couldn't stay here forever. We had to find a way to fight or flee, but before we could make a decision, the figure suddenly appeared at the cave entrance. It stood there, tall and terrifying, with eyes glowing like embers. We couldn't see its face clearly, but its mere presence was enough to make our hair stand on end. "Please, leave us alone," one of our friends shouted, his voice trembling with fear. But the figure only growled in response. It stepped into the cave, its body glowing in the darkness. We backed away, trying to keep as far away from it as possible. But as it drew closer, I saw something that made me gasp. Behind the terrifying shadow, I saw the face of a young woman, a face filled with sorrow and suffering. What do you want?" I asked, my voice shaking. The woman didn't answer. She just stared at us with eyes full of sadness. I felt something strange within her, as if there was another force controlling her. Suddenly, she let out a wolfish growl, sending shivers down our spines. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of a ghost, hungry for blood and darkness. We knew we couldn't stay here any longer. We had to move before the figure attacked us with its dark power. With determination, we leaped out of the cave and fled into the darkness of the forest. Our steps were quick, our hearts filled with fear and despair. But we couldn't give up. We had to keep fighting to survive. That night seemed to last forever, haunted by the terrifying presence of that ghost. We hid behind trees, moving cautiously among the frightening shadows. But no matter how hard we tried, the figure always seemed to find us. Finally, after fighting against the darkness of the night for hours, we saw the sunlight begin to peek over the eastern horizon. It was a sign that the night would soon end, and perhaps we would be saved from this terrifying terror. With heavy hearts, we parted ways, each seeking a way out of this cursed forest. We knew that night would always haunt us, leaving deep wounds in our hearts and souls. And since that night, I vowed never to forget that terrifying experience. I knew that in this world, there was darkness greater than we could imagine, and we must always be ready to fight the evil lurking behind the shadows of the night.